Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Comments from the Peanut Gallery podcast. We are here joined by a special guest here today. We have Jared, the Bear Fiorda. How you doing, my man?
I feel great. I just got done getting hit in the face by a bunch of people better than me, so it's always a good day when that happens.
Always got to learn, right? Never stop growing.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, before we dive into the thick of things, where can people follow you?
So I'm on all social media everywhere at Bear Fiorda, Bear like the animal, Fiorda, and that is on all social media platforms, even the more obscure ones.
Awesome, awesome. And, big reason for you being here on the show today. You do have a fight coming up. Why don't you let us know a little bit about the details of what you have going on?
So here's the thing, and I don't like this only because sometimes things aren't completely decided. To my knowledge, to what we have, it's the 18th. It's with Dan Henderson's team. They have a fight. They hosted their gym. So I believe it's Friday or Saturday the 18th. Can't remember which day. I don't know the opponent yet, but the moment I do, I'll be releasing that information. I'll tell everyone about it and what's going on. And to my knowledge, there might be some streaming available to everyone who wants to watch the fight who cannot come to the event itself, and I'll also have that available in just the next few days.
Awesome. And you train at Hendo's too, correct?
Yep, that's my home gym.
Awesome. For those who might just be getting up to speed here, that is Dan Henderson's Athletic Fitness Center out there in Temecula, California. I know that he does just through the gym or attached to the gym. They've had a ton of these showcase sort of fights and cards. So I think that that's awesome, especially out there in California where there's such a concentration of fighters that are always trying to get fights or have an opportunity to go out there and compete. There's only so many shows to go around in the existing
Yeah.
space. So the more that are out there to give people the opportunity to get out there and put their skills to the test, the better, I feel like.
It's super helpful, and people don't realize promoters go through so much trying to put on these shows for everybody, especially at these lower levels when there's so little money to be thrown at the events. These guys are real miracle workers. So to have an opportunity for young fighters to get in there, test their mettle, build themselves up, really got to give credit to the people who are putting on the shows themselves, because that is not an easy task by any means.
Oh, certainly, and especially as you mentioned, when working with the elimination ranks, that's there's a lot of variables and volatility within the actual roster of available combatants. Just the same, I help run a show out here in Colorado, and yeah, there's, I mean, everything from life situations to somebody's car got stolen and now they have to
Mm.
go and work the next weekend instead of being able to go out and fight or put in the time the next couple of weeks for camp. They've got to work some overtime shifts. I've seen it all as
Yeah.
far as that stuff goes. So I totally understand what you're talking about.
Man, that's unfortunate. I'm so sorry to hear that, but it's true. Life gets in the way a lot of times. It's very few things go perfect when it comes to the world of fighting. So when you can get the situation where you have the event, you have the promoters, you have the staff, you have the fighters, that's picture perfect. And I'm sure there are hiccups along the way even then.
Definitely, definitely. Now, is in relation to just circling back with social media and talking about the follows and whatnot, you have a pretty big digital presence all across the board, whether that's with your TikTok to Instagram, whatever the platform may be. It seems like you've built yourself a pretty nice little platform that has a steady following.
Yeah. No, I at the beginning of the pandemic, so I run a nonprofit mixed martial arts gym called Free MMA. People can actually follow that and look at the lessons online at Free MMA gyms. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we got shut down. So I could no longer offer the services of teaching martial arts for free for people. And so I took it online and I followed a good system. Good people out with my promoting the business, the videos, and teaching me what I need to do on social media. And put up a video that just hit really, really well. And I was able to build a nice following. And now I have hundreds of thousands of what I actually prefer to consider friends versus just people or fans that I can teach and elevate. And a lot of times they give back to me and they help me out as far as either donating to my nonprofit or helping spread the word of free MMA everywhere.
You mentioned something right there that it's crazy how fast time flies, that it's already been almost 3 years to the date when everything got shut down.
Mm.
But in certain places of the country, it definitely didn't hit as hard as far as shutdowns, regulations, restrictions, any of that. But you
Right.
guys out there in California, were hit with some of the most stiff policies that we saw across the nation. So, yeah, I'm sure, as you mentioned, having to shut the doors down, that probably caused a lot of panic for the gym owners out there and the people who made their living through this route within martial arts, being a business owner, teaching classes, whatever it may be, something that involved you showing up to a physical brick and mortar and providing a service or product, whatever it may be. How, you mentioned you pivoted that to the digital space. Did you
Right.
feel like that was a fairly easy transition for you, or was that something that, you kind of had to take some lumps in the process and it was a little rocky and then took off, or did you feel like you kind of hit the ground running?
So if you go way, way back, and anyone ever, I have people who will go all the way back to the beginning of my videos, hundreds and thousands of videos at this point, probably all the way to back to the beginning. You'll see that it started off where I really wasn't, it's definitely not like what I'm doing today. It started as I was only trying to give content for the people who were already at the gym, people who could just
Mm-hmm.
come easily follow me and they get the lessons on the daily there. And that's because I wasn't as concerned with like getting super, super huge. I just wanted to be there and provide the service to the people who are already coming. And then I started to get a little bit more proactive with the video making and the content creation because I realized, and my team helped me realize, that I can be doing this for so many more people instead of just the ones who showed up to the gym. And so that's when I started taking it seriously. See that the content kind of changes, the videos start to hit a little bit more. It was definitely not like an immediate, I first video got 100,000 views, second video 1 million views, and it never stopped. I've definitely had ups and downs, especially in the very beginning. But the goal at first wasn't to get super big. It was just to provide the services I was already doing. And when I realized how much bigger I could make this, that's when it became about how good can I really make these videos and how many people can I really reach and teach people about martial arts and combat and fighting if they want to defend themselves or they want to make this career out of the teaching. So it wasn't necessarily the biggest thing in the world. I definitely didn't hit the ground immediately with millions of followers or views, but it was a process. And I'm very proud of what we were able to do today.
Definitely. I mean, I feel like as a whole, we saw not just from the pandemic, but then now subsequently following that time, the shift of working from home or training from home, just not really in 2023 today, Bear, you don't really have to leave your house, depending on where you're at in the country. You don't really have to leave your house to exist or survive in society anymore, right?
No.
Like the mass uptick of delivery services and whatnot, such as your, like from DoorDash to Instacart and things of that sort, Amazon Prime. You don't need to leave the house to go get your basic amenity or your basic life things that products you use to exist. You don't have
Yeah.
to leave the store to go to the grocery store anymore. If you wanted to order food in from a restaurant, you can do that now with stuff like DoorDash. Now with training, that kind of just follows suit. In the past, there was, I feel like, unless you really kind of knew what you were doing with body weight workouts or certain types of martial arts training, there wasn't a whole ton of people that did a lot of training from home or just going to the park and doing something. But I think ever since that springtime of 2020, when everybody was forced to do that, there's been a little bit more of a shift. And there's people like yourself who have came along and have put out then a workout. Like you would have people that maybe say they were an open class student at your
Mhm.
gym, but then they say, oh, well, you know what? I have a bag at home, but like I really don't know what workout to do on the bag outside of maybe the couple little things that we did in class. And even at that, I'm still a recreational 9 to 5er. So it's not like this stuff was soaked up like a sponge. And I remember every bit of the curriculum for that workout that we were taught in class. But if I had someone who was talking to me through a screen saying, okay, for the next 3 minutes, we're going to drill this combination or X and X sequence. You feel like that's kind of what the overall shift was that you saw from your side as well?
I not only that, but people who were looking to actively compete. At one point, when you look at people who wanted to join or wanted to become an MMA fighter, a boxer, a kickboxer, whatever it was on a professional level, you vaguely understood that, okay, I probably have to go to someone to teach me this. And it was a process. If there wasn't a gym near you, you had to make some sacrifices to travel, or you were forced to give up on that art and maybe try a different one if you were determined, or give up altogether because not everyone has a gym near them. At that, not everyone has a competitive gym near them. Now, the idea that social media comes around and gives people these videos and these ways to train at home, it gives them the ability to learn the very basics, get that down, and maybe when the situation arises, take advantage of going to a gym to further their goals. On a more casual level, it's certainly changed the game. People who just wanted to work out, who just want to learn how to throw a punch for the sake of throwing a punch, the internet has done such good for that. It's given everyone not just the ability to learn how to do these things, but to see what it's like in real time. You can see, hey, this guy got hit in the head. This is his reaction to that. Now I understand what it could be like for me to get hit in the head. And it's given a sense of reality. At that, I will say it does encourage a lot of people to not go into facilities because, like you said, we can just stay at home. We can exist. I can order in all the food I want. I can order in all the martial arts I want. If I want jujitsu today, I'll go hand pick some classes I want. I can pick whatever lesson I want. I don't have to rely on a coach to tell me what I can or cannot do, even though they probably should. So it's definitely made it to where anyone who's doing it casually can just pick up whatever art they want whenever they want and start that same day. They don't have to go take a trial. They don't have to pay out of pocket for anything. They just take it from YouTube, take it from TikTok, whichever. And then when they want to, or they have the availability to, they can move on to go to a gym and maybe further this process of learning.
Yeah, which that kind of leads me to the point in thinking of all of this. How far ahead of their time were the Gracies with Gracie University? Is
Sorry.
that they had the Gracies like Henry Gracie and the Gracie
Oh,
Jiu-Jitsu in
right,
general, that they
right.
had the online Gracie system to where that
Mm-hmm.
was available to people far before the pandemic hit, to where you basically you could go to any, you had certain perks within the Gracie centers, go to any Gracie certified training center, you could work on testing up or those sorts of things. A lot of their intent obviously was for those trying to learn and just get used to or ingratiated with technique from jujitsu. But I also feel like a big part of them, and I think it's a thing that we've seen a little bit more, or at least here in our gym, we've
Mm-hmm.
seen a rise in some of your civil servants, like your police officers, security guards, those sorts of people coming in to train. And I think that was a great resource for them back then, but it was very niche until the pandemic came along. But then that comes now and you see like, okay, well, it's open and available for anyone in pretty much any discipline out there. There's
Mm-hmm.
fight tips that's out there, to striking breakdowns, jujitsu on the go, so many different apps and little individual sites that you can go seek that content from. And I feel like, even our gym for that matter, just to speak from our experience, we filmed a bunch of online content to be able to put out to our students from our coaches during that time frame, because a lot of them reached out and said, hey, well, I still want to get a workout in, but I want to learn from you guys what to do, or I want to
Mm-hmm.
know what to do. I don't know it myself, so talk me through something. We even did like virtual sparring sessions to where we put the camera right there on like a point of view, so you could
Oh,
move
okay.
around
That's
and kind of
cool.
react based off of the action that was coming at you. So just
Yeah.
I think those adverse circumstances that we faced societally allowed for creativity, and we all, as business owners or people involved with gyms and that put out content associated with gyms, we had to evolve. We had to
Mm-hmm.
figure out ways to innovate and to stay ahead of that curve. See what I did there? But we had to figure out a way to basically evolve with the time. Otherwise, unfortunately, there was a lot of places that closed their doors during that time frame and never opened back up.
Yeah, absolutely. To touch on your point, yeah, we all had to evolve and change and make do with the situation at hand. And I lost students from the pre-pandemic time to now. They just didn't come back. They either moved on to something else, they decided it wasn't for them, they were happier with doing it at home. But I also had students during the pandemic who were still able to not only take lessons in the class, but actually apply them. One of them, particularly in a really terrible situation, I have a young student and her mother were at home and they had a burglary. They broke in. The gentleman at the time held them at gunpoint. The lady was clearing out their house. It was two people doing this. And the young girl was a student. And she said because she continued the lessons throughout the pandemic, even online, she was able to find the courage. And when the guy looked away for a second, she just uh, cocked back and hit him as hard as she could and broke her pinky finger, knocked him cold, grabbed the gun, and they called the cops and got them arrested. Didn't lose any of their stuff. They were completely safe. So I think being able to go online and provide the services that we've been able to, even if it was very difficult for us to transition, some of us at times, I know it's kind of hard for me at first, getting the content up, getting it out for the students and the people to watch, and now the world. it has its merits. It's worth it now that people can go back to continue this process, because you never know who you might leave an impact on. And I'm terribly sorry for all the people who lost their businesses, because it was not an easy transition and not everyone made it. People can put hours and hours and hours into trying to make this happen, and still bills are real. It's going to come. You owe what you owe on your rent, even people trying to help you out during the pandemic. And so some businesses couldn't make it. And I'm really sorry to hear that. But I think if, particularly in her case, and for many people's case, if they didn't have MMA, they don't have martial arts, that stuff can save your life. And so it's important that we still try to provide that to them, and by any means.
Absolutely. And that was an actual life or potentially
Yeah.
life or death situation where that is that's the adversity that you're facing. But I feel like, though, having the benefit, or ever since I've started training on a regular basis, years back, it's such a help mentally. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a past the point of feeling physically confident to be able to, defend yourself, all that, so on and so forth. The mental gratification of going out there and, one, just putting yourself to the test and being in the fire. And it's you have to rely on yourself. There's nobody, once that bell rings, or once you go toe the line in competition, you get locked in the cage. There's nobody that can save you at that point. It's
Yeah.
all about you. It's more of a process driven situation versus being results oriented, for me at least. I want to know that in that time frame that I could go explore those parts of myself that would not have otherwise been brought out, or I wouldn't have had to just explore that part of my consciousness, the dark matter of the mind, like Goggins refers to, those sorts of things.
Mm.
When you're faced with having to deal with that sort of physical exertion and adversity on your plate, I just feel like you learn about yourself. You learn things that you would have never learned otherwise if you had not been put into that sort of fire. And that's whether you're somebody who is a 9 to 5er, someone trying to compete, whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
think that you go through these sequences, and you have to learn something about yourself in the process.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are people who will go out and they'll train hard for one fight. They'll have their one fight, they'll lose, and they'll think, hey, you know what? I did it. That's for me. That I don't need this anymore. I've found out enough about myself in this day that I'm not didn't make me happy, but I'm glad I did it. And then you got the flip side, people who just thought did it on a whim. We got people who come to the gym continuously who want to come and train and fight, and they go in there and they're thinking, I didn't really expect much, but I got in there. I Something clicked in my brain. I knocked that dude out, and I love it. And I want to keep doing going, keep competing. And so it I think it's for everybody. Whether you stick with it or not is okay, but the experience is what's important here.
I totally agree, and I also feel like just the general experience of going in and spending a little bit of time on the mats or taking a couple of classes, it's also humbling, to the sense of you understand, or you come to learn a better grip, or have a better grip on what true violence is. I feel like
Yeah.
there's such a mass amount of the general population out there who have a tremendous overestimation of what their capabilities are and how easily they could go and do something. I was at a watch party out at a sports bar with some of the LFA guys this last weekend for UFC
Mm.
285,
Very cool.
and you just but in that environment, cool being with the guys, with the organizations and all that, because we all talk the same language. We all come from the same walk, right? But
Hmm.
you're in a big gathering of just mass casual fans for the most part, and then just the things that you hear people saying, or the general adage of, oh, why don't you just get up? Well, man, they were saying that about Cyril Gahn once John had him up against the fence. Like, you don't think that he's just trying to get up?
It's just
Like,
sitting there having a good time.
you don't think that he's trying. He just doesn't have the technical skill set to be able to do that against a superior athlete in this position.
Hmm.
This
No,
little things like that.
100%. I remember one of my fights. I came out of the cage, and I went sit with my family to watch the rest of the fights, and I got these guys behind me, very clearly drunk, very clearly having a good time. But every moment of the next two fights, this guy was shouting everything he would have done better, and then turned to his buddies like, "That would never happen to me." Almost textbook almost textbook stereotype what you see on the internet. And it's one thing I think to myself, of course, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. It's absolutely not the case. He would get mauled by any one of the competitors who went out there tonight. But I also recognize that's the guy lining those competitors' pockets. That's the guy who bought the tickets, who provided revenue for the event, for the athletes. And you'll see that in any circumstance in life. You could be the best scientist ever. You can be on par with Neil deGrasse Tyson. People are going to call you an idiot. And they're going to say you don't know what you're talking about. But those are the same people who are paying to watch your seminars, to paying to watch your shows or whatever, to make those comments about you. And so I think it's a little bit of give and take. But people, I do agree with you. There's a large population on the planet that don't understand what violence is. I think Faraz Zahabi made a similar comment talking about almost getting into a fight with some dude on a plane. It's when you realize how bad a situation can get, you typically want to stay away from it. That's the bottom line.
I couldn't agree with you more there, and that's I guess the better point or the better correlative to make in terms of training, and you understand what it is. It's not past just the that's the casual example of the things that people will say. But
Mm-hmm.
then, I feel like a lot of times when you see these, like, from whether it's like Reddit public outrage type of threads, whatever, these people who are out there and trying to just cause a scene, start altercations, and very rarely is the aggressor in those situations someone who is a trained martial artist. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty fair to say I don't have any sort of data or statistics to support that claim by any means, but I just feel like, especially then when you do see those altercations that turn physical, you can tell very evidently that they don't have any sort of real skill set behind them. It might be some big blustery guy who, I think there's an internet personality called like Manic Mike or something like
Mm.
that, and he's a big like bodybuilder type of guy. And you think, oh, these little jujitsu guys, you think that they're 160 pounds. I don't care if they have technique. You think that I'm just not going to pick them up and slam them? I mean, he's like a big 280-pound bodybuilder looking guy, but you though by that alone, you saying that means that you don't understand technique or you don't
Yeah.
understand what the arts are, and you're a I just see red bro kind of guy.
I love that. We saw a video recently on the internet. It surfaced. I think it was Gordon Ryan was wrestling the mountain, right? Or he's
Yes.
grappling with him. Gordon Ryan is what? A 200 pounder when he's competing, maybe a little bit higher. Is he that or a
I
heavyweight?
think now I think at ADCC this last year he was like 230, 240-ish, around in there.
So 230, 240. The mountain's over 400 pounds,
Yeah,
and he was ragdolling this guy. So power is good. Power is important. And it's necessary, especially when you got two competitors who are on a similar playing field. That gives you a real nice edge. But if you don't know what you're talking about, and you go up against a guy who is significantly involved in his particular style, especially a combat style, it's only going to be a bad day for you. Even if you hit him, you think he hasn't been hit before, you think he hasn't dealt with adversity or trials in his own style or competition before. You're the one who has a lack of experience. And so everything he does, everything the competitor does to you when you start a fight is going to be so much worse for you than him. And then you're still not going to win on top of that. You're still going to walk away with your pride hurt. So it's just better to avoid situations altogether. You don't have to have a chip on your shoulder. Not everyone needs to catch your hands because they accidentally bumped into you or whatever. It's just not worth it.
totally, 100%. And then, especially as like when you're young, you don't think of what some of those consequences might be, right? When
Yeah.
I'll speak from my own experiences, 18 to 22, 23, around in there, young, dumb, partying a lot, all of that. Who cares? You go get into a fight and maybe something comes of it, maybe something doesn't.
Hmm.
And then back then, okay, you get slapped with whatever little charge associated with, but as you grow older, no, then that's time of day then that I have to take to go to to go to court for this ticket. Or then, depending on the severity of the charges and how they decide to press it, then you got to hire an attorney. There's more time right there than what
Hmm.
is all the time that you had to put into work to earn the dollars that are supporting that defense fund. And then,
Ah.
two, if, say, for whatever reason they did decide to convict you, maybe you were that same young dumb kid and you had a couple of priors when you were 18, 19, even if they weren't related to fighting, those are still charges on your record that a prosecutor will look at, and they'll say, you know what, like, you haven't, even after 10 years, you're 30 years old now, these last offenses that you had might have been 8, 10 years ago. But
Mhm.
this is still showing a pattern of behavior that you never really changed and you never grew respect for the law. So now you've got to do 30 days in jail or whatever the sentence may be.
Mhm.
Well, then, okay, that job that you had, what job is going to let you just not show up for a month or a couple of months and then come back and you have your job still, you still have your same earnings threshold, your benefits, so on and so forth. That's not there. And then at that point,
No,
if you got incarcerated for it, you're now a violent offender. So you go get another job after you just got fired from your old job. Well, when they go to do a background check for you, what's the first thing that's going to light up? So that's,
you're
it's just a snowball effect of one bad decision, that one minute or 1 second decision, if you will, that you made that went the wrong way, could have just had lifelong implications for you.
I have been talking to people about repercussions of actions and fighting for so long, and never once has that line of thought occurred to me. I'm stealing that. I'll give you credit for it. I've never heard anyone talk about that. And it's such a good point because in my brain, it's like, yeah, you get into a fight, get hurt by the other guy. That's because you mouthed it off against someone who knew what they were doing and you paid the consequences. But that's very, very true. God forbid you're the one getting involved in the altercation or fight, right or wrong. You're still suffering the consequences of those actions, especially if the police get involved. That's a very good point to make.
Definitely. And depending on what state that you're in, if you break a bone, it doesn't matter if you're acting in self defense or not, that could be a felonious charge.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, that just adds up to it. It could have been something like, you know what, neither one was very significantly injured, but maybe you fractured this person's cheekbone or an orbital or something in the process of this scuffle. Then right then and there, something, I mean, that they're going to be fine, especially if they didn't need surgery. They're fine 6 to 8 weeks from the fracture, but that's now a felony charge that you're having to fight because there was a bone break. So
Wow.
it's just so many different things that can layer up upon itself that yeah, it's not a good thing to be in the fold with. This is something a little bit similar that I wanted to ask you about. Was watching a couple of your videos, but not
Mhm.
not exactly that same line, but somewhat in the same vein.
Yeah,
I want to ask you about sleep fighting.
yeah. Man, I also have talked about this for a long time, and I talk about it because I deal with it. And I think here's the basic premise for anyone not sure of this: sleep fighting is just a term dubbed. I don't know if there's an actual technical word for it, but I just in the middle of the night, on occasion, especially if I have not been going to training enough, I got like the nervous energy building up, and I go to bed. I will thrash around and I'll knock pillows off. And my girlfriend lays in bed with me. I've accidentally smacked my girlfriend. I've kicked her girlfriend. I For the longest time, I didn't know this was a thing until she was starting telling me more and more about it. And I'm like, I mean, is it really that bad? Is it really? At one point, I was like, is that really what happened? And then one night, I was about to go to bed. I started dozing off, and I just rolled over and I backhanded her in the back. And she looked at me with like this fit of rage, not because I've done that, but because I'm awake too now, and I was just awake enough to realize my actions, and I've got that face of, oh shit, she was right the whole time. I'm so sorry. And
Yep.
so, and so, and now I make videos about it and I talk about it like, hey, it's you gotta be one, be careful because if you do this to the wrong person, it is very difficult to say, oh, I was asleep. I'm sorry. That's the bare bones of it. But someone can easily interpret that as you just punched me in the back. I don't think you were sleeping when you did that. That's not a thing because they may not be martial artists, may never have had the experience or whatnot. So I try to not normalize it per se, but just get this information out. This is a possibility. If you train a lot and then you just stop, your body will still go into these reactions, especially let's say you're having an aggressive dream or nightmare. Your body may kind of wake up out of the REM cycle and you may start physically moving along with what's happening in your sleep. You see your pets do it all the time. You do the same thing. It just if you're a fighter, it could mean this other aspect of your life comes into play where you might actually be thrashing about in bed.
I mean, how many fighters or people who just even, open class or people who train and hit the bag? How many just subconsciously you start just shadow boxing or maybe, having a little bit of bob to your foot, to your footwork and you're just standing there in place, not thinking about it. But it's just the movement that you start subconsciously doing. So yeah, I could totally see how that's something that comes about sleeping. And it was funny that you mentioned that when I was looking that up because later on that day, one of my teammates out here at Factory X, Vanessa Demopoulos,
Mm.
she was talking about how she used to do that with one of her ex partners, and like she'd get woken up in the middle of the night, and she would just be like rage thrashing.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it's
it's something
scary.
that happens.
I'd say this, if you have had the experience where you're maybe watching a fight or watching one of your friends spar, or even you're at an event and you see a punch coming and your body twitches, you react to it just a little bit, you're probably inclined for this kind of thing to happen because you're involuntarily moving to what you're perceiving as a threat, even if it's not directly happening to you. And that's basically what a dream is when you're having that motion, that sleep fighting.
Oh, certainly, certainly. Just a couple more before we cut off here.
Mhm.
I see that you have a PFL hoodie on right there. Just this is
Yeah,
just a side note. The PFL media crew actually is right outside my door with Rob Wilkinson, the current reigning 205 champion. That's one of our guys out here. Fights Thiago Santos in a couple of weeks.
yeah, it's gonna be a good
For
fight.
that first. Oh, huge fight. But is there any promotion? I mean, obviously the UFC always gets the recognition for most as the crown jewel out there, but
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of hardcore fans or people that are deeply immersed within the sport, you kind of have your own outside of the UFC, the promotion that you view a lot or is one of your favorite shows, whether it's the roster that they may have signed, maybe it's something like the concept that they bring behind it, the
Yeah.
broadcast crew, something to that effect. What would be, if you had to say, all right, the UFC's not on this weekend, what promotion are you going to? If all shows are running, all shows are available for you to watch, what would be your go-to?
I actually, one of them I fought for, and then one is PFL. And I worked with PFL on a media standpoint before, and they were awesome people. I loved the videos I made for them and talking about them, especially for one of their latest events. I think it was the last event of 2022. I helped them promote. And
Nice.
it's the other one is called Fury. And I fought for Fury as an amateur, and they have great pro fights and they're on Fight Pass. Fury
Yep.
holds really good events. So I'll go either one of those two labels any day, along with UFC, or if they're not on, what else is on.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've done commentary for Fury before in the
Oh,
past.
nice.
Yeah, it's small world of connections out there. I think we all, to a certain extent, if we've been around long enough, have had some sort of degree of separation with a lot of these shows. But
Yeah.
yeah, for me, I would probably have to say, I love the concept that PFL brings to the table, though I do
Mm.
think that there are some flaws with the scoring system. I
Mm.
know just for example, a couple of years ago, not this last season, but the season before, Chris Camozzi, for example, he was 1-1 on the season and he beat I believe I can't remember if it was Jenkins or he had a finish in one of his fights. So but
Mm.
somebody else got into the playoffs with the same record over him, but he had the head to head win over this person, and they made it. Like I can't remember the exact circumstances surrounding it,
Yeah.
but it was a thing of like, well, how does this make sense? Like head to head should account for something.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that. I'm not too familiar with the timeline you're describing, but certainly I'm sure things of that occur. And I'm sorry to hear about that gentleman's loss. One of the things that drives me towards PFL itself is because I love the concept of what they do for the fighters. In
Right.
their last event, they paid out millions of dollars. I mean, to everyone go for a championship, and I think even their undercard and their main card events that weren't getting the $1 million checks were still making tens of thousands, if not more. And especially for pro fighters who aren't in the UFC, you're fighting, unfortunately, for as low as 5-5, and I mean 500 and 500,
Right.
and as high as like 2-2, where it's 2 grand and 2 grand. And even that concept of 2-2, where it's like, hey, I'm showing to put my life on the line, and you're telling me by taking the loss, I'm going to lose half my paycheck. I mean, if you're willing to pay me to step in there and win, why can't you just pay me to step in there and fight? That's the point of this. And so with them, I appreciate what they do as far as not only just the rates, but the consistency of how much they're paying their fighters. And I think it's going to set a precedent moving forward for other labels to do the same thing if they're wanting to get the same attraction of fighters. One of the things I want to do is fight for them because I love what they do for their competitors. Definitely what you said earlier, UFC gets a lot of that recognition for being the top dog. They've been around. I think they've been around the longest. If not that, they've just been the most consistent. God, 30 years now, I believe. And they're the ones who brought it to the forefront. I think the Gracies put on the first two or three, and then probably more than that. And it really got people involved in the sport. And so the companies like PFL and Bellator may not be as big or may not exist if this didn't happen. But I think times change and we need to kind of evolve with that as both competitors, promoters, and as casual viewers for that matter.
Oh yeah, certainly, certainly. I mean, all great points right there. We've covered a few hot topics throughout this conversation here. Real quick, Bear, we've got about 3 minutes left on this recording. Is there anything that you want to plug or put out there before we come to a wrap today?
Yeah, a couple of things. Along with all the social media I mentioned, I really am trying to build my YouTube channel. So if you guys like listening to me commentate on fights and people, or you want to see me hit other people more often, go check me out at Bear Fiorda on YouTube. And please also follow my gyms, my nonprofit mixed martial arts studios page at Free MMA Gyms. They're also on all platforms. I have the exclusive rights to both those names, Bear Fiorda and Free MMA. So by all means, anything that says that name on there, it's me. Drop it a follow. And thank you.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining us in here today. We hope that everything still comes to fruition. I know that you said sometimes these things are a little bit in flux with these events, but
Yeah.
all things go according to plan. Hopefully you go out there, you go take care of business next weekend. It's next weekend, right? Yeah,
The
making sure all my
18th. There's a little bit more than that. Oh wait, I'm sorry. This week, next week. Yes, you are correct.
yeah, so not this coming weekend, but the weekend
Yeah.
following from that, the weekend of St. Patty's weekend, essentially.
Ooh,
It's
that's gonna
a
be
it's a
fun.
it's a big fight weekend, pretty
Mhm.
much all across the board. There's always and that's another thing too. Just on a quick note before I head
Yeah,
out, why I love local level shows or certain smaller promotions. And on my radio show that we do weekly, I do it with Josh Friend from the UFC, who actually fights this weekend. But we would
nice.
go through one of our segments or a lot of our segments and talk through the names of just some of the shows that are going on across the country. You have some of the wildest names for these local shows, like like St. Patty's Beatdown or the Fall Brawl, or just some of these. It's
Yeah,
incredible names. It gives a little bit of flair to it that still keeps our little bit of edge. We've gotten a lot more mainstream since going to ESPN and Showtime and all these other big networks, but we still have a little bit of that raw and ruggedness with us. Folks, thank you all so much for tuning in today. We are out of time right now. This is the Comments from the Peanut Gallery podcast. Make sure that you give my man, Jared Bear Fiorda, a follow all across those platforms. I'm Jordan Kurtz with Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Check us out on the MMA Plug presented by Mile High Sports each and every week, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. That helps us continue to produce this original MMA content and bring it for you every single week. Tune in to the MMA Plug presented by DenverSportsBetting.com on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio on Wednesday nights from 6 to 7 p.m. or live stream at DenverSportsBetting.com/radio.